Hey guys, what's up? Roshi is here. Today we're taking a look at my new updated Merriest Mandrake list. Uh, I've been playing a deck similar to this for a while on the ladder, but thanks to the new preview event, we've got a lot of new cards for this deck, and I think it really puts it over the top. I was able to kind of put my money where my mouth is with it. It took me one afternoon and I was able to fly up the ladder. I'm now rank 8. I actually made it as high as rank 5. Then we went ahead and lost to a Sky Crag player playing some, they were on the play, so I dropped back down to 8. So that's, 5 was the cap, but I'm sure if I continue to play it, we can push a little further. As you can see, my last 20 games, all I really did was play Merry Mandrake. I have a few expedition games in here, but of the throne games, I've only got 2 losses of the ones I've been tracking. Very obscenely strong win rate with this. Basically cruised all the way up from Diamond 2 to Master in one afternoon. So the deck's definitely solid. Let's take a look at it, and we can... wrong deck here. Take a look at what's going on. It's very similar to my Merry Mandrake of the past. We're still playing even-handed Golem, so I think I'll only touch on what's new in here. No need to reinvent the wheel. The rest of it's already pretty tested. But we've got SpeedGrafter and winrate going on here, and what these allow us to do is charge, ultimate, pay 3, swap a card from your hand for a time card or a factionless card from your market, and then give a unit in your hand charge. One of the best things we can do with this is we can actually fetch up a Grodov Stranger or an Azindel and give them charge. So this lets you get their crazy effects almost immediately. One thing that can actually happen in this deck is we draw so many cards that we could actually be in danger of decking ourselves. Maybe our opponent's playing mill, or maybe we just want to get a power and draw a card and hit our opponent for 7. So oftentimes Grodov Stranger will be the first thing we snag with this. It just really puts a lot of pressure on your opponent. And one of the cool things about SpeedGrafter is, in the past, one of the more annoying cards for us to deal with was actually Garden. I believe Garden of Omens, but I always just called it Garden. And SpeedGrafter really allows us to put a hurt on a lot of sites. Let's pull up Garden here. Yeah, Garden of Omens, 2 power, or 2 toughness. And then there's actually a few other sites that just get completely blown out by this. There's the Argenport one. Let's pull that one up here. Regent's Tomb. And then there's actually the Primal one. And this is probably one of the more relevant ones, as Yetis is, or at least was, very popular on the ladder. I had a few games where my Yeti's opponent would maybe keep back 1 minion to block, like maybe my even-handed Golem or something, and I just spam a SpeedGrafter and slam through and finish off their site. And that's just completely game-changing for them, because they can use this to basically every turn of the game turn off a blocker. Especially if you're trying to block with, like, you know, even-handed Golem or something. Just even that one chump block can all be the only tempo swing it takes to lose the game. So if you're able to blow out this site the turn they play it, you really limit how much tempo they can get on you. And it's very helpful for dealing with that. Next up, we've got winrate, and it has the new extremely powerful ability of regen. And what this does is, the first time a unit with regen is dealt damage, prevent it. This is huge. Cards like Eled Ascending can be like 20/20s. Maybe you're getting attacked by a siege train. You know, even a Champion of Chaos, all of that damage will just be negated. It's the equivalent of casting a Silverblade Intrusion. Unfortunately, we have to spend 2 power for our Silverblade Intrusion, but hey, I won't complain. This card's solid for us. It really helps us stem the tide of aggro. Even if we're not using it for its ultimate, turn 2 winrate can be all it takes to just win a game against aggro. Like, it'll let your minions survive combat against something with quick draw. Or you can even just chump block with it twice. Sometimes that's all it takes to beat aggro, is to just, you trade with their Oni Ronin and then you trade with something else or trade with a removal. That can be all the tempo you need to slam into board and get going. Pay 3, swap a card from your hand for a factionless card in your market or a shadow card, similar to the other one, except this time you're giving a unit in your hand +1/+1 and regen. So we can actually use this to spread the powerful regen ability around. Bonus points if you give it to something like Damara or Desert Alchemist and just surprise your opponent with a blocker and then have that blocker around for the next turn. But really, anything you put this on is going to be just fine. One thing I've done is I've put it on Grodov Stranger, so my Stranger will actually have charge and regen. So they can't even play cards like Desert Alchemist to deal with it because it'll just stick around for the next turn. And the other thing this lets you do is, let's say you're in this massive board stall situation where you're both just sitting there with a massive board and staring at each other. You can grab this Grodov Stranger and you can grab this Azindel and leverage their powerful attacks the same turn you're attacking with them and not really fear for them dying in combat. You can just slam them in, even if they're not even going to do anything or they just get blocked. You'll still be able to get their effects for that turn. And that makes Vinegrafter quite the valuable card, especially when you start comboing up these abilities. Now, since we're just Xenon, we don't get any of the other grafters, but those are actually pretty solid too. We did some testing with it, and lots of fun to be had. The most obvious combo with these cards is the Merry Mandrake. I already mentioned this is a Mandrake list. Our goal is to play stuff with ultimates. Thanks to the new grafters, we've got some really spicy ultimates, very cheap to cast. With Mandrake in play, we only need to spend 2. The ultimate from 3 will go down to 2, and then down to 1, and it can't actually be reduced any cheaper than that. So we can use Vinegrafter and SpeedGrafter, and if Mandrake is in play, it's a 4 power investment. You're gonna draw a card, gain 2 life, and pass those powerful abilities around. And since all of our stuff is like 2 drops, we can go ahead and play Even-Handed Golem to get that really superior card draw. Since we've got fodder from Golem and fodder from all of these grafters, Devour gets really solid, another 2 power, draw 2, and another way to gain life. So as you can see here, we have a ton of incidental life gain, incidental card draw, and once you get going, it can be really hard to stop. And what I mean by get going is we are playing Katra. So Katra can give us a really spicy way to get ahead on power, and also, amusingly, regains life. And actually, the spells can't leave the enemy void can be pretty solid. There is an at any cost deck out there, and if you've got Katra in play, they don't have a way of stopping you. So they can't use the prodigious sorcery until Katra dies, and that basically means you're free to do whatever you want until they draw their Ikaria. Speaking of Ikaria, we're playing 4 Ikarias. It doesn't really get much better than this. Ikaria comes down, blows up a site, blows up whatever their best minion is, and then sits around to block, to attack, and the ability can be quite powerful in the right matchup. You can slam down this Ikaria super early too, thanks to Katra. And then if they kill it, or you devour it even, you're going to empty their hand of all removal if they don't have Aegis. And we have plenty of ways of dealing with their Aegis, so we can really strip our opponent's hand, and it's quite powerful. Speaking of ways to deal with Aegis, an early Dickrow's Ruin can really put the hurt on any sort of control deck. Oftentimes they're going to be packed with card draws and Silexes and lots of treasures being flung around. I mean, Honor of Claws actually just reads Lightning Helix your face with this in play. And it basically completely counteracts Transpose being able to stop unless they were to use Transpose and not swap, which is just pretty crap value. So an early Dickrow's Ruin can be quite valuable, and it's also absolutely hilarious with a Mask of Torment in play. If you're playing against these decks that are, at any cost decks, for example, that are just trying to draw a ton of cards, if you've got Dickrow's Ruin and Mask of Torment in play, and they play an Honor of Claws, you gained 3 permanent power from that line, just from them casting that spell. Or if they play a Silex and play a treasure, that's 2 permanent power that you just have, which lets us really do crazy, hilarious things with Mandrake. Speaking of Mandrake, when Mask of Torment is in play, if you have 1 Mandrake in play, it's only 10 power to play the Tormentor, and it's really not that hard to get 10 power. Also, every time your Mandrake is triggering ultimates, it's going to give you more permanent power. So this deck is kind of like a snowball that just gets absolutely massive, and you just continue to get incremental value until all of a sudden you just absolutely explode onto the board and they just can't stop it. So other than that, we've got Last Chance, really cheap way to rebuy your Icarias or rebuy your Mandrakes or really whatever you want. Doesn't really matter what you use it on. It's nice to have this utility and access to just rebuy our powerful things. If your opponent's playing another funny thing you can do after you've put all those fun abilities like charge and regen on Grodov Stranger or a Zindel or something, we can Last Chance it back and do it again, which is great. Defile is there as just kind of an answer for cards like Wump and Mizo. I actually used to play 2 Petitions, and I swapped them out for Desert Alchemist, kind of for the same reason. Elysian Spells is a deck, and I wanted to have at least 4 answers for Wump and Mizo, in addition to Icaria, obviously, but just some early answers so that we don't just get ran over by it. And then last but not least, Send an Agent lets us kill an enemy unit or relic with 1 faction or less, so we're popping Brokers, popping single faction units, popping stuff like Backbreaker or opponent's Dick Rose Ruin, really whatever. It hits so much, it's an easy 4-of for us. The other card I didn't talk about, Damara, it's still, even though we got these new ultimate markets, Damara is still just one of the best ultimate cards to have in our deck. Unblockable while attacking sites doesn't always come up, but when it does, it's pretty sick. The fact that this has ambush means we can just use it as a 2-power torch sometimes to just deal with threats. And also, being able to play it at the end of your opponent's turn gives you a lot of versatility and, you know, maybe surprising your opponent with an extra minion or guaranteeing you have an extra minion in play so you get 1 extra power off of Catra. A lot of utility here. And against the other mid-range matches, Damara is an absolute house, so he earns his slot. Sometimes people are playing really cool combo decks that rely on their market to access their like combo cards, and we can just rip Damara into play at the end of their turn, and then turn 5 when we've got 5 power, or, you know, it doesn't need to be turn 5, just whenever we have 5 power, we end a turn, play Damara, on our turn, go into their market, and if we take their combo, they just lose. Like, that's the game right there, and then we just have to find a way to finish them off. Moving along, for the market, I've been trying out Xenon Temple. It's pretty solid. The fact that both grafters can fetch it is pretty nice. It's another way to trigger our Mask of Torment, and having access to Killer can be cool. Sometimes you'll play against decks that use a lot of Void synergy, and being able to slam Temple and just start stealing their stuff out of the Void can be a good way of dealing with that. It's also just a good early play. You can kind of curve into it too. Turn 2 Grafter into like turn 3 Activate, and then maybe do something else on turn 4, and then turn 5 you can slam a Temple. And since this comes down a turn before Stranger, oftentimes we'll be spamming these Grafters with Mandrake, so you just kind of need something. I just kind of needed something solid that I could grab. I originally had Vara in this slot, but I just had so much fat and so much top end that I just didn't need it. There's another option for this slot. You could just play Vara's Choice, just a really solid removal spell, or like Banish or something. That's totally up to you. This is definitely the flex slot. I would consider the rest to be pretty set in stone, though. I talked about Stranger. He's great. Pale Rider's Timepiece, since we are playing Mask of Torments and Catras, it's not that out of the question for us to spellcraft this. I've done it multiple times, and it also is just a really good way, if you're just getting smacked down really hard, you can play this on a minion, deadly it into whatever their best guy, and hopefully that's a big enough life sling that you can, our superior card draw can put us ahead. Passage of Eons, there's a lot of curse decks flying around. There's sling decks, there's, I mean, I suppose if you were to play against a mirror match, just plenty of relics, plenty of annoying units that need to be dealt with. I'm not playing as much removal as other decks might be, so a hard silence all on the board and just clean slating it can be a great way to get ahead. You know, like even like a beacon deck is going to be annoyed to see a Passage of Eons played against them. And last but not least, a Zindel. When one of your units hits the enemy player, draw the top card of their deck and reduce its cost by 2, and it makes 2 guys. This is basically an army in a can and a card draw engine in a can. This card can and will win the game on its own, but it really shines when you've got a large board of just a lot of random crap. Then out of nowhere, you slam a Zindel, and we attack with all of our grafters and golems and Icarias or whatever's just sitting around, and then we'll draw a bunch of cards from our opponent's deck. Thanks to Mask of Torment and Katra, we can actually get to the point where we're casting a Zindel quite early, and that's pretty helpful for us. For our power base, we are playing 8 Vows. They're absolutely critical to have for our Katras to ramp us. And any game where you have like multiple Vows into like Crest or Seat, and then you like play a Katra and ramp up to 6 power, you're immediately able to slam like a turn 5 Icaria. That's just a game-ending line a lot of the time. Turn 4 Katra into turn 5 Icaria, that's lights out for a lot of people. And before that, we've got plenty of removal, plenty of plays that we can be making to make sure we stay alive till we fire off this powerful line. And this kind of puts us in this special place where we're not an aggro deck, we're definitely mid-range, but we're able to keep tempo with aggro. You know, sometimes an aggro deck will come out blazing fast and they're on the play, and they'll just have unbeatable hands, but it doesn't matter what deck you're playing, you'll probably just lose to that regardless. Against the vast majority of the meta, we're able to get out ahead of them, and start generating card advantage earlier than them, and really get in this position where we're able to be both ahead on cards and like life and power, and then it just starts to snowball out of control because Mandrakes are going to be triggering, Dahmer is going to be stealing stuff from their market, and so on. So it's really easy for us to get ahead on power, on card advantage, on board, and just snowball it from there. So it's a super fun deck. I'm not surprised at all that we were able to push it as far as we were, up to top 10. I'm sure if I had more time, I could push it even further. With the win rate we had, easily could see this being top 1, but I simply don't have enough time to grind out the games. I had some spare time today, so I did make it up to top 10, but hopefully you guys can take this deck even further than I did. It will require you to do some drafting to get your playset of Vine Grafters, get your playset of Speed Grafters, but other than that, there's not anything new in here. Rest of the deck is mostly obtainable, and it's just a solid list to run. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'll probably be playing this deck more live on stream, but that is all